to have our second education workshop, The Power of Produce. And before we get started, I want to just thank our sponsors real quick for this educational workshop. All Fresh, Baby Bay Produce, Classic Salads LLC, Kings River Packing, Ontario Greenhouse, and Williamson Produce. Give these guys a round of applause. Thank you. Also like to thank our educational workshop refreshment area that you have outside, which is in Now You Know, Eco Farms, Four Seasons Produce, Fowler Brothers, Fowler Farms, Tasty Fruity International, and the Noons Company. Thank you guys very much. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Anne Marie with 210 Analytics. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. My mic's on? All right. Thank you so much for all showing up. The guys standing in the back, thank you for making this a standing room only session, but there are still some chairs around. It's an hour and 15 minutes, so if you want to come sit down, you'll have to come to the front. So my name is Anna Marie. I'm with 210 Analytics, and I have the pleasure to work with FMI on designing and conducting and also presenting the power of produce. I work with Rick Stein. He's here at the end of the podium on your left. And where does the power of produce come from? Because in addition to a session, it's an in-depth research report, and I advise all of you to download it because it will give you a ton more information than we're able to cover today. So years ago, 13 years ago to be exact, we started a report called The Power of Meat. And over the years, this just became the Bible of the meat industry. Whether you were a packer, processor, retailer, wholesaler, everybody was using that. So then Rick joined FMI, and he says, Anna Marie, I know you love the power of meat, but if there's one department that is more important than meat, it is produce. As a driver of traffic, as a store choice, as just the excitement and the image of the store, let's start doing a power of produce. So here we are, year 3, and let me talk to you a little bit about what the power of produce is. So today we're going to present results from the 2017 study. And when I say the study, it comes together from a whole lot of different components. More than anything, the key, the core, the skeleton of it is a consumer study with 1,500 shoppers. And we qualify them to be shoppers and eat produce, and they're at least 18 years of age. And then we start peppering them with produce-related questions. Anywhere from where do you prepare, how do you prepare, where do you shop, do you buy value-added organic, and last but not least, how can we improve? Then we also know that what a shopper says is not always as they do. So we make sure that we connect the shopper data with IRI and Nielsen, and we overlay all of that so we have the full picture of everything that happens in our departments. But more than anything, this industry really is developed by the industry for the industry. So before we even start writing the questions, we connect with anybody that we can talk to about what is going on in your world, what do you see in your research data, how are shoppers being different, and we try to capture that in the studies going forward. So if any one of you here loves research and you want to get involved, the more the merrier, right, Rick? So Rick, real quick, over to you for you to introduce the panel.
All right, well, thanks, Anne Marie. Before I get started, the report wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. So I do want to acknowledge Eureka Global, Hill Phoenix, and the Southeastern Produce Council helped sponsor this research. So thank you to our sponsors. So with me today, we have Jake Krempel, Director of Produce and Grocery at HelloFresh. Jake, welcome. We have John Rain, the Chief Marketing Officer and Senior VP at Giant Martins. John, welcome. And we have Randy Riley, Director of Produce Merchandising at the Kroger Companies. Randy, thanks for joining us today.
All right, so what we're going to do today is it would be impossible to take you throughout the entire report. First of all, it would be boring. Second of all, we'd be here for 3 hours. So what we did, and you'll have a handout laying on your chair if all is well, is we picked out the top 10 findings of the study, and that's that white sheet. The other thing we prepared for you is the overview of 2017 that shows you how the total U.S. did in produce, but we also pulled out the Southeast numbers to show you how well we're doing, what a fantastic story it is in the Southeast. So rather than trying to walk throughout the entire report, we're going to take you through the 10 biggest points, and we're going to kick it off with number 1, and that's really our biggest enemy. We have to tackle our biggest enemy, and that is routine. when it comes to shopping, when it comes to shopping for produce, a lot of us tend to buy the same items again and again. And if we can figure out a way to get past that routine, then we all win. So fortunately for us, it doesn't appear to be a huge uphill battle because a lot of shoppers say, I do want to expand my knowledge. So let's have a look at some of the numbers. My clicker's not working. Can you put me to the next slide? Thanks. So the way you can grow any category really is A, by getting more people involved, and B, by getting them to buy it more often. Well, when it comes to fresh produce, household penetration is 99.7%. So trying to grow fresh produce by getting that 0.3% is kind of a useless task. So really what we have to do is we have to get people to buy produce more often. And that's really where we have a huge opportunity. In our survey, we asked folks, how often do you buy produce, fresh produce? How often do you eat it? And if you look here, 48% said, I eat it just about every single day. Well, that leaves 52% who are not eating it every single day. And in fact, there's quite a few people that only eats it 1 to 3 days a week. So our task as an industry is really to try and keep pushing people to the right of your slide and to really get consumption up. As I said, routine really stands in the way of that. We asked people, do you buy the same set of items, or do you have your favorites, but you love to explore? So the way that really panned out is that 17% said, yes, I have my items, and you know what? I'm perfectly happy with my little set of items. Big chunk, 33% said, I have my items, but I have my comfort zone. And I would love to get beyond that comfort zone, but I need advice for that. And then 50% said, I have my favorites, but I'm always on the lookout for something new and different. So really for us, the 2 buckets on the right, those really are the important ones. Because if you add those up, we have 83% of people who welcome ideas, and that really is a huge opportunity for us. When we talk to shoppers about where might you be wanting to include more produce in your diet, as you can see, a lot of people are looking across different categories, different mealtime occasions. Because if you think about produce, it's a big and mature category, so it's not going to grow on its own very, very easily. So finding these new consumption occasions, that's really what it's all about. So lunch and dinner, those have been the big ones, but you still see a lot of consumers wanting more in those areas. How can you bring more? Maybe it's value added, maybe it's organic, maybe it's just introducing them to new items. The newer consumption occasions really are snack and smoothies. And a lot of that you see happening in the frozen aisle actually with a lot of the produce kits for smoothies and freshly squeezed juice, but we can definitely play into that as well, and we tend to see a lot of that innovation on the show floor as well. And then if you look at the differences between the millennials and the boomers, again, these are fantastic opportunities with 30% of boomers looking at the smoothies and the shakes that have a lot of fruit in it. So what do we need to do at retail? We need to not disrupt, but we need to interrupt any which way that we can. Here you see some great examples, just reminding shoppers about, hey, it's back to school time. How about healthy snacks? How about you're in the checkout lane, and instead of a candy bar or some chips, how about a dietitian's choice with a lot of fruit cups or vegetable snacking? On your right, you see an example of Neiman's, who completely changed their ad, and instead of just items, really looked at those meal occasions and said, hey, how about some fresh blueberries with your yogurt? We have a huge opportunity to bring produce out in the store. And the reason why I say that is just about half of trips include produce. So what if we remind shoppers when they're in the store to buy produce when they're buying cereal, or produce when they're buying all the items for a spaghetti dinner? These are huge opportunities for us. Now, a lot of us bring other items into the produce aisle as well. I always say be careful of that, because produce is a beautiful department, and cluttering it up with a lot of center store items takes away from that visual beauty. But we have huge opportunity to bring it into the store. Last but not least, there we go. Kids are a huge point of entry for produce. that's really when we see parents getting engaged, wanting to make sure that their children gets fresh produce. So figure out a way to really make that connection. If you have baby clubs, if you have young family clubs, have these kinds of ideas where kids in the store can grab a free item of produce, produce snacking, apple fries, great ideas. So Rick, over to you. I'm really looking forward to getting some feedback on that.
Great. So, we all know that providing customer service and proactively giving consumers information is the key to loyalty and increased consumption. And with that being said, what are some of the challenges in doing this? What successes have you had, and do you see this as a key tactic to increase sales? So John, what have you found successful, and what is challenging in this?
Thank you, Rick. One of the things that's most challenging is really the workforce. Hiring, training, the right associates at store level. Produce is a living department. It continuously changes. It's a department that we have to make sure that we're culling frequently, that our associates are all about freshness, able to answer questions at the point of sale. So we continue to invest in those associates. We see our customers are changing. Customers are becoming much more educated about the categories. They know a lot about it. They have a lot of questions about it from a nutrition perspective, from what's the difference between organic and local product, et cetera. So it's incumbent on us as retailers to really pick up our game, step that up, and invest more. Some of the ways we've done that is through educating our associates through ELM classes, which is they get certified in particular areas, as well as we have invested in some kiosk apps for them and at store level so that they can easily access the answers to questions that customers may have.
That's great. Jake, do you attempt to communicate customer service by providing product information or cooking directions via digital?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're primarily a digital company at HelloFresh, right? And so, everything we do, whether it's through our app that we have or Facebook, Twitter, our customers are very loyal to us as a brand, and they very much try to engage with us a ton online. We have some of the best engagement numbers out of any of the meal kit companies, so we try to use that as an avenue to educate them about the product that they're having, right? And so whether it's through our blogs that our bloggers will do weekly, they're always coming down to us for ideas about, hey, what's in season, what can we talk about? When stone fruit comes up, we'll give them a whole list of here's all the different stone fruit, here's all the different uses you can have, right? But we also have a unique opportunity that our customers are getting mail from us every week, right? They're getting their box in the mail, and so it's not just digital is a way that we can sort of present that to them, but whether it's a little tidbit on the recipe card that we send them, or our Fresh Life magazine that we do once a month, that's really just a way to educate the consumer about the product, right? And it's very much our focus, right, of trying to educate them about the products that they're using.
Very good, very good. Anne-Marie, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, these guys have hit on it a couple times. The shoppers are becoming more knowledgeable, and I think the biggest reason for that is Americans are more and more moving to a leveraging health and managing conditions and preventing conditions through food. Now, in produce, we've always been ideally positioned. The government, the studies, the science, everything has always supported the consumption of produce. But what we looked at was, can we go beyond just that overall health halo? So step one really is reinforcing that notion of eat produce, it's good for you. Here are just some examples from the marketplace. On your left, you see Byerly's and Lunt that has a whole program throughout their store that focuses on nourishing a healthy lifestyle. Make sure you get enough rest, eat a good diet, exercise, that whole notion of a balanced and happy lifestyle. The one in the middle is Walmart, actively connecting Fitbit, so exercise, in the produce department, and the whole notion of eating a lot of produce right there in the commissary. But as I said, what we did in the study, it's not working, can you click me forward? What we did in the study is looking to see if we also had an opportunity to go beyond the overall health halo. Is that working for you? Thank you. So we asked, when you think about eating produce, fruits, and vegetables, what do you associate it with? So as you can see, the biggest one is a balanced diet. And that's really that overall notion of produce is good for you. But then you see there's a whole lot of other claims that have a very good connection to produce that we can leverage in different kind of ways. Digestive health, heart health, healthy weight. Oh, now we keep going. That wasn't me. Can we go back? There we go. Providing energy. Now what you'll see in the report is that there's different generations and different kinds of shoppers that resonate with these claims differently. But I do think we have a huge opportunity to actually start tying back to very specific issues that people are trying to manage or prevent. Here you see some examples. Hey, it worked. Kowalski's out of the Minnesota area. Antioxidants is one of the biggest diets out there still. So what they do in their magazine and in their store is they have an antioxidant mix. A great example here, I absolutely love this. Rick and I always look at it, and I always say, during flu season, we all took the flu vaccination. It didn't work, so all of us are ramping up on vitamin C, right? When it was at the all-time high in Lakeland, I went to Publix, I went to Walmart, I went to all the stores to try and find emergency and vitamin C. They were all wiped out. So what do? We eat oranges. Well, what this potato company does extremely well is, hey, we are a good source of potassium. Don't need to eat just bananas for that. Rich in vitamin C, perfect for mashing. It's got a recipe on there. So all of a sudden, a potato is seen in a completely different light. The one on the right I love as well. It's actually at 7-Eleven, where a lot of students go for their Slurpees. But in this case, they tied back bananas to high potassium and promoting brain activity. Great ways to tie back specific fruit and vegetables to very specific health conditions that people might be looking for. Tying in your dietitian, your nutrition trips, different ways of cooking it. These are all great ways to tie back to health and wellness, which is a gigantic trend all throughout retail. Rick, over to you.
Sure. So, we continue to see consumers associating produce with health and wellness. And now, in some cases, specifically for treatment of a specific illness. How do you communicate with your consumers on the aspect of health and wellness, and specifically on holistic health? So, Randy, as part of a healthy diet, people are trying to increase their produce consumption occasions. How are you assisting consumers in that path?
So Rick, first of all, let me speak on behalf of the Kroger Company. Thanks for having us here. We are a customer-centered organization, and those that have been doing business with us for a long time know that we take customer data and make decisions based off that. And the data that's coming back is overwhelmingly similar to what Anne-Marie is talking about with health and wellness. So just a couple examples of tactics that we put into play to help customers achieve their health and wellness concerns is our wellness program at Kroger. So you think about our in-store pharmacies, which is some of the biggest in the United States. We've given our pharmacists the autonomy and empowerment to not only have conversation with our customers, but providing good consultation on preventive measurements and maintenance of the future. And you couple that with a recent acquisition we had a couple years ago with our in-store clinics, the Little Clinic, where we have registered RNs in stores throughout the United States, providing health care for the issue that the customer is coming into the store with, but also offering consultation on future preventive maintenance issues. And you couple those two things together, and that's our wellness program. But something we initiated a few years ago was having registered dietitians and nutritionists in our stores that's taking all of that information, taking our customers in aisles, helping them select their needs and to achieve their goals, and it all starts in the produce department. So that's one tactic. The other one is we're working on developing a scoring system, and this is in development today, and it'll be released hopefully here in the near future, where we're taking customer shopping lists or their purchasing patterns, we're scoring it, we're letting them know if that is achieving their health needs and desires, and offering healthy alternative recommendations for them. But those two examples all start from sourcing responsibly, partnering with great suppliers, and providing great product to our customers.
Great, that's really good. Jake, what avenues do you utilize to message about specific health benefits in preventing or managing health conditions in produce?
Yeah, so for us at HelloFresh, health and wellness is a big play for us, right? It's something that's very core to our company. We were one of the first meal kit companies to have registered dietitians on staff, right? And so each of our meals have to hit certain benchmarks, as well as the whole menu, all 15 recipes we put out each week, have to have a total component that our registered dietitians have to sign off on before it can ever go live on the website. And so for us, I think the way that we add value for our customer is you're getting that balanced meal every week, right? And that doesn't mean we don't have hamburgers on the menu almost every week, which I always get, right? But and our burgers are our best meals by far. If you get HelloFresh, make sure you get the burgers. But it's partnered usually with a veggie, right? Instead of potatoes or French fries as a side, it's always with a cauliflower mash or zucchini fries or something to keep the meal balanced, right? And so for us, we're able to present a way for our customers to use produce in a different avenue than they're used to, as well as sort of keep that plate balanced overall. And with us, every meal comes pre-portioned with the exact ingredients you need for either 2 or 4 people, right? And so as much as I want to go grab a second burger after my wife makes the meal for us, there's none left, right? And so for us, pre-portioning for our customer as well tends to add some health benefit for them.
Good. It's good to see that health and wellness is front and center in their strategies and tactics.
Absolutely. I think health and wellness is probably one of the best ways to move people beyond that price focus, because that is our third point, and that is shoppers do continue to very much plan the produce purchase. I mean, meat is the extreme where we see huge numbers of people research the meat purchase, but produce is definitely still very much a planned purchase as well. So when we start looking at the numbers here, 74% of shoppers use at least one platform to check prices and promotions. It might be across stores where they're sitting at the table comparing a whole bunch of different circulars. It might just be at their primary store with the circular. And as you can see here, we tested a whole bunch of different platforms that people might be able to use. So the ones in green are the ones that are growing. The one in red is the one that is declining. Nobody will be surprised to see that is the circular at home. However, it still is the biggest one out there, used by 56% of people. If we were to go 4 or 5 years back, that was actually up into 70 and 80%. So we have seen a big decline every 5 to 7 points every year, but it's starting to stabilize. And yes, it's driven by boomer interest, but we're still at that point. As you can see, we're moving away from a paper circular would hurt us because it continues to be the biggest platform out there for researching produce promotions. Like I said, the ones that are growing are the app, and a lot of the digital areas are stable, still crawling up 1 or 2 percentage points. But the one that is really interesting to me is the in-store signage. And especially when you start looking at it across generations, across incomes, across ethnicities, across the different stores, the one that is just consistently high all throughout is that in-store signage. It's one of people's biggest frustrations that when they're in the retail store, they can't find the price, because ultimately it does play a big role. But if you start looking at this slide, what you'll see is that when you compare the millennials to the boomers, the millennials definitely are more into researching using digital platforms, be it the app, be it an email, be it the smartphone or social media. So this slide, I think, is going to continue to develop quite a bit over the next couple of years. First of all, some of those older generations are going to adapt technology at faster speeds. On the retail side, I think our communications are going to be better and better, and the platforms are going to be better. And then, of course, the millennial dollar is going to make up more and more of the total produce dollar. So this picture, I think, is going to continue to change very much. So in-store signage, make sure it's front and center. People are able to really find prices. Also consider that these days it's not just about the hottest ad. It's really about being the most relevant ad. And depending on who shops at your store, that might be throwing in some organic, or maybe if it's an organic buyer that isn't price sensitive, then don't. But maybe it's value added, maybe it's something new. Just try to tie it back to different solutions. But really it's about being a relevant ad with the right message, the right price point, and the right item. More than anything, too, all these new and digital ways in which shoppers are starting to engage, I think they provide us with a huge opportunity, and that is education. In the circular, we are limited in space. The real estate is only so big, so we're mostly focused on price in the circular. But when you think about the emails and the apps and all those different platforms, we can very easily link, say, an avocado to the grower, or how do you pick a good avocado, or how do you know it's ripe or not ripe, and we're able to educate and inform instead of just using that price point that we do in the circular. Two-way conversation, so incredibly important as well. We can also use technology to have promotions just in one store, like is done here by community markets, and then a happy hour, a produce happy hour just for a few hours in one particular store. So really start leveraging technology, whether you're a grower or a retailer. Rick, over to you.
So, I remember in my retail days, print advertising was always a big expense, But now you see consumers are navigating not just to print, but they're using devices. And as Anne-Marie pointed out, a lot of in-store material, to research their purchases. So, John, do you believe the growth of in-store signage is related to this convenience time need of the consumer?
I definitely do. I think it definitely has a huge impact on how the customer shops. Obviously, you saw the numbers about print versus digital and how quickly things continue to change. I would continue to think that's going to move forward, and maybe even at a more rapid pace. We see customers more engaged with platforms like load-to-card coupons, those types of things. That really is the entry point into them understanding how to become a digital customer. So obviously, there's tremendous amounts of data available to us as retailers. We're able to best utilize that data to really get the customers what they're really looking for in a smart way. At the point of purchase, in produce is a very special department in that the product is always the star. It's really about the product first and foremost. So we have to be cautious and careful about the signage, whether that is at the point of purchase or the digital signage, that it doesn't become overwhelming and is also very concise to the point and calls out the attributes that are most important to the customer, whether it's health or wellness, taste, profiles, seasonality, those types of things. So I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that we're making those right decisions for the consumer, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, it sure is. Hey, Randy, how are you leveraging digital in the new and innovative ways to connect to the store?
Yeah, so let me take a step back here. I think all their traditional ways of communicating with customers, most retailers are doing them very well. In-store signage, print mailers, TV, radio, everybody's doing that pretty well. And I think the evolution of all this is how do you tie in digital? And digital is a big piece of our strategy. So we're creating a seamless experience, which means we want to take in-store signage, print media, TV, radio, and say exactly the same thing we are on a digital sense. Seamless to the customer, same communication, and meet them where they want to be met, whether it's on devices, whether it's on radio or TV. An example of that is we deployed a new initiative sometime last year called precision marketing. So we have the data, we have the analytics, we know what the customer wants when they want it, and how do we speak to them the way that they want to be spoken to. And this is an initiative our team at 8451 is taking hold of and really talking to the customer in a plurality of ways that the customer wants, partnering with key suppliers to making sure that they get the most out of their funds that they're initiating to this process.
Very interesting. And I think it's great you're connecting with the suppliers and having them come along that journey with you.
Yeah, I mean, the feedback has always been from the supplier standpoint, what's my ROI in it? And what we have is data that suggests that they get the most out of their spend through this mechanism versus any other.
Yeah, very good. Anne-Marie?
Yeah, and I think that makes absolute sense. Price is something we have to be cognizant of. As I said, it is about being a hot price, but it's also about a relevant price. So what we always do is we have what we call the produce decision tree. And we have a whole bunch of different areas that people rank. And as I talked about for years and years in meat, price per pound was always the number one and still is the number one in meat. So when we started doing this, I was completely expecting for price to be the number one in produce as well. Well, it was not. Easily, appearance went over the top of price. And really what it boils down to is, sure, connecting across all these different platforms in terms of promotions is important. Having a relevant price point is important. But at the end of the day, in produce, the eyes decide. And if you just simply only have the hottest price, you're not going to seal the deal. So it's really that interaction between price and appearance and making sure that you are that visual department that shoppers love. To John's point, my joke always is, we need to not look like NASCAR. There's a million things that we could do with flags and tags and promotions and health and what have you, but at the end of the day, the product has to really shine for itself. So we need to make sure that we inform and pick and choose our items throughout the month, but definitely make sure that the appearance and the visual appeal of produce speaks first and foremost. So the other thing that appearance can do, besides sealing the deal, is really prompting impulse. And we were stunned, but 86% of folks said, I often buy produce items that I had not planned at all. So of course, our next question was, well, how? Well, first and foremost, and this speaks to the appearance, eye-catching displays is the #1 way in which people say, I was just in your store to buy a gallon of milk, but I was walking by this, I couldn't help myself, here I went. So eye-catching displays is a great way to capture impulse, especially if you, again, look across the generations, the incomes, the ethnicities, it doesn't matter. Eye-catching displays just continues to grow more important across the population and is important universally to really everybody. Secondly, hot promotions. There is price and that inner connection between appearance and price. Hot promotions are important, especially if you look at the millennials. 42% are really affected by a hot price. So that might be the couple of stations within your produce department, and make sure they're clearly marked, make sure they're stocked. Out of stock is really the #1 detractor of satisfaction for a trip. Sampling, to me, this is a really, really big one. And I know at retail, sampling is hard. It's difficult to keep them stocked. You have to put a person on it. But at the end of the day, my biggest point for sampling is it's something online can't do, or very easily anyhow. So again, if you look across the generations, but if we were to do the same thing for income or any of the other ways you can slice and dice data, sampling is important to everybody and can prompt an impulse purchase. Last but not least, information. First of all, recipe and serving ideas. They really work for everybody too, and those are some big numbers. 1 in 3 people can be influenced to buy an impulse item by seeing a fun recipe. The beauty of that, if you think about those unpacked recipes, is the fact that now you're not just selling strawberries or tomatoes, but you're selling basil and mozzarella cheese and everything else that comes with it. So it's a great way to build the basket. Nutritional call-outs, we talked about that already. It's becoming bigger and bigger across the US and really across the store. It is driving huge sales. And a great way, again, to connect, especially with the younger generations. Rick, over to you.
So John, you said that the product's the star, and in our report we say the eyes decide, right? So the consumer's telling us that they're making their decisions at the point of purchase based on that quality and freshness. And Jake, that begs the question, how do you approach quality in a digital world?
For sure. I mean, we live and die by quality, right? I'd say much more than any other experience I've had in my past. For us, our customer expects retail quality for a food service application, right? And I have to do the shopping for them. I can't send a produce clerk to their house and rotate the produce in the kit bags that I send every week, right? And so for us, every single meal kit we have to send out has to be perfect because that's our customer's expectation. And so, we've been doing a lot of things on the quality front to try to find a way to balance the nature of produce with what we have to do with quality, right? And so we have a lot of people on our team. Krista, who's here with us this week, has worked a ton on what does HelloFresh quality mean? How do we give that information to the people in our distribution centers that are making those picks every day? In a way that's easy for them to understand what quality means at HelloFresh, to make sure they're putting the right zucchini or apple or whatever it is into the box. So
very interesting. So Randy, I gave you the tough question. This is the one that goes back, we were dealing this in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. So how do you approach maintaining peak conditions and balancing that with not having unnecessary shrink?
Yeah, so we're a data-focused company. I mentioned that earlier. So all of the data that we're looking at mirrors everything that Anne-Marie just said. So when you're trying to balance peak conditions, a presentation that's advantageous and attractive to the customer, that becomes quite challenging. So you and I had a conversation before this about how retail grocery is very operationally heavy, right? We have to focus on margins and bottom line. And we put processes into place to help lift those challenges. But the merchants within our retail environment have to be centered on presenting a department that's attractive to the customer. And there's really two ways that we at the Kroger Company think that we can do that. On a customer-facing standpoint, continually train our associates. When it comes to ordering, we know that that's probably the biggest contributor to unnecessary waste or shrink, to use your word. So we've got processes into place to help our associates do that, looking at backward-facing data to make good decisions on future orders and things of that nature. And then we have to train the associate that is touching the product to further educate processes and how to care and handle that product. So we have a robust training process, and we put capital towards that in order to achieve that. The backside of the business is interesting, though. We have to continue to reevaluate our processes and our supply chain in order to get the freshest product to the stores so that they can deliver that to the customer. And an example of that is here recently we instituted joint business planning sessions with key suppliers talking about what else can we do to help improve the freshness at store level for our customers, because that's what this is about.
Well, you're very reflective of the current thinking, because I think a lot of times people thought it was at the store, and it was a matter of the store presenting the best product and managing the food waste. But you're looking at the entire supply chain, which is really collaborative with your suppliers, which is a great way to approach maximizing the freshness and still achieving your financials in terms of the bottom line. So Anne-Marie?
So all this focus on having the best appearance and the best quality has a lot to do with the competitive environment that is out there. So I always say we used to worry about that one supermarket up the street. These days we worry about the two up the street, the two down the street, the supercenter, the club store, the meal kits. There are so many ways, farmers markets, produce stands, so many different ways to access produce. So really we need to figure out a way how to attract shoppers to our store. So when you ask a shopper, where do you buy produce, supermarkets continue to really pop very, very highly on that. And as you can see, they still are big in grocery in general, though that number used to be in the 70s and 80%. Now with the new competition, you see that grocery basket spread out across a lot more models. But when it comes to produce, supermarkets continue to be very, very strong. Supercenters tend to lose a lot of folks when you think about the produce aisle. And organic stores and different formats tend to gain. So when you delve a little bit deeper into that supermarket bucket, however, you see a little bit of a squeeze on the conventional model. And when you look at the total dollars of produce being sold, the ones in the conventional model are getting squeezed a little, losing some dollars, and really the two ends are gaining, both the value, the limited assortment, and that organic, premier, fresh piece. So positioning and all what these guys talked about, differentiation, making sure the shoppers recognize you for your brand is extremely important. There we go. So we also asked, okay, we know you tend to have a primary place where you buy your produce, but how often do you also buy produce at other different places? And as you can see, there is quite a lot of noise out there when it comes to the occasional purchase. Folks are really in love with farmers markets right now, and where they used to be open maybe, 2-3 months a year, a lot of them are open year-round. They're popping up all over the place. They're approaching 10,000 farmers markets across the U.S., so it's really starting to have an impact on our produce dollar. And what's very important is produce is that trip driver. So as a retailer, if you lose the produce dollar, you tend to then also risk losing some of the other items in the basket where folks start to go to dollar stores or convenience stores. So others that are important is that roadside produce stand, the organic specialty store, meal delivery kits from a buy it in the last 30 days, we only had 3%. But when you actually look at have you bought it or accessed it at all, we're typically looking at about 22 to 25% of the population. Now, not everybody has bought those meal kits because there's, of course, a lot of incentivizing to get people to try it. But what we were curious about is, what about meal kits at retail? Is there an opportunity for that as well? So when you look at the percent of shoppers that is interested or very interested, that's actually 51%, which is more than double than the number that have tried meal kits that are sent to them through a delivery model. So there certainly seems to be a lot of interest at retail, and that makes a lot of sense within this whole movement of seeking convenience that we'll talk about here in a minute. So from the power of food service at retail, which is the third power that was added, we included a couple of stats here on meal kits. Ease of preparation, of course, front and center for meal kits, but that includes packaging, that includes having microwave ready options as well. Variety is a huge key. We've heard the reference a number of different times. When we had the different cuisines out there, there's really not one that wins. And when you ask a boomer, sure, they're a little bit more interested in that home-style familiar dish. The millennials, no surprise, very much into the international and ethnic dishes. But overall, it's variety that wins the game in this meal kit space, and also shaking up flavors quite a bit. My clicker is just not. Can you move me to the next slide? Thank you. Portion sizes. We heard some talk about 2 people, 4 people. That's exactly what we're seeing in the research as well. A lot of times, a single person, sure, is looking for a 1-person meal, 2-people household looking for a 2-people meal. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of shifting back and forth as well, and you see retailers play into that. Like an H-E-B marketplace has a meal kit for kids and a meal kit for adults, both for 2 people. So now we can have 2 different meals. A lot of times, people that have a family will still buy a 1-person kit maybe for a lunch opportunity or maybe when the family is traveling. So definitely a lot of interest in different sizes as well. Rick, over to you. Can you flip me to the next slide?
So I think Jake's chomping at the bit to so I'm going to save the last question for you, Jake. But
Good.
You know, meal kits, there's just tons of information. I just came from a meat conference. I think they had 4 sessions on it. I open up my email every day and I got an article about, you know, it's either blockchain or it's meal kits, right? So with that being said, you know, let me start with John. What are some of the biggest hurdles in meal kits at retail?
So my organization embarked on meal kits several years ago. I think some of the challenges are that we saw that our e-commerce channels, our omni-channel presence really did a much better job for us than our in-store expectations. I think some of this has to do with the fact that on a digital basis we can communicate those attributes about quality and freshness in a better way than we can in that in-store environment or in print environment. That's one of the huge challenges we've seen. So we see also the target customer as somebody who's more engaged in that format of food in terms of the size, the selection, the different offerings that they have. So I think that's really the key driver that we've seen.
Randy, let me kick it down to you. So in your opinion, is there a place for both in-store and online meal kits? And are these different consumers?
I would tell you an adamant yes. There is room for retail and digital. You know, Jake was giving me the evil eye when he saw that picture right there.
So the one time you talk about meal kits, you can't find a HelloFresh picture?
You have my email.
Yeah.
Good presentation.
So just so that everybody in the room knows, that is the Kroger version of, or what we're trying to do with meal kits. So, but to answer your question, and I'll get to prepared, is yes, there is plenty of room for meal kits at retail level. And, you know, data suggests that this is an upwards of a $5 billion industry, and it's rapidly growing. And HelloFresh has done a nice job growing their business and has articulated a path forward that we think that we can tap into as well. So you think about the Kroger offering. We tested Prepared in a market last year in 4 locations that were different demographics, different sales volumes. It touched customers in different ways, and they were all successful. And the advantage of a retail meal kit at Kroger is this. We offer a non-subscription based, low waste alternative that's a $7 per serving target price that's just advantageous for the customer for the here and now. And the results have been astounding. I was given a little data point earlier. I don't know if I'm allowed to share it, but it's to a point where we're going to have an aggressive rollout in 18, and then 19 to be in the vast majority of our stores.
Very good. All right, Jake. What are some of your findings in why people are drawn to meal kits? Do you see meal kits evolving into different types of offerings? For example, lunch kits, things of that nature. So I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I think first I'll piggyback a little bit on Randy's question of, where's the fit for online and retail? And I think us at HelloFresh, we feel the same way, that there's fit for both, as well as, I don't think if you ask us as a company, we would think retail is just competition, but also an avenue for us as a way to sort of sell our meal kits and tap into a different consumer than we get through our subscription model, right? You look at who our core customer is, they split into multiple different sort of areas, right? Convenience is a huge play for a lot of our customers. They want the variety, right? We have a lot of customers that want to learn how to cook, that just want to learn the skills weekly, right? And then we have those that want to eliminate the food waste, right? Where we give you pre-portioned ingredients that you need. You don't have to buy 6 chicken breasts to get the 2, like you might have to at retail. So, for us, answering your question about what does the future hold for meal kits, right now at HelloFresh, we tend to touch 3 or 4 out of the 21 meals that our customer has, right? And so our mission is really how do we find a way to tap into those other 17 or 18 meal choices that our customer has. And we're trying some very different innovative ways, right? Whether it's different distribution channels other than just our subscription model, or even within our subscription, we've done pilots with breakfast meals, right? We have a concept now that's out there. It's dinner to lunch, where it's a little bit more premium upcharge, but what you get is a dinner meal with some extra ingredients that you then get to turn into lunch for yourself the next day. So if you have a nice, chicken dish, we add some salad greens and maybe some dressing, and you get to make it into lunch the next day with the additional chicken that we might send. So, for us, we very much see avenues of trying to grab those additional meals from our customer and really sort of give them, the benefits of HelloFresh more than just 3 or 4 times a week.
So this was the question. They gave me a referee whistle just in case. And I'm curious, Jake, on your opinion. Is it the same consumer? Is that consumer making a decision, I'm either going to go online or I'm going to go in store, or do you view it as 2 different consumers?
No, so all the data that we have from any research that we've done or even tests within retail has found that it's 2 very different consumers that are looking for different things. The one in store tends to be, what Prepared has done so good, which is, the 20 minutes or less, a lot of pre-chopped, ready-to-eat ingredients, right? That they're looking for a quick solution, where our core customer is not really solely focused on, I want a quick meal. They more want that cooking experience, right? We still will offer that we have 1 or 2 20-minute meals every week. We try to offer that convenience play as well through the subscription, but what we've found is, retail is a totally different market and a different consumer, and a way for us to be able to sort of share that benefit of HelloFresh with somebody different. So.
Well, gentlemen, well done. You handled that question extremely well. Thank you. Anne-Marie?
Awesome. And I know we could talk meal kits for a lot longer, but
Yeah, I have a rebuttal. No, I'm kidding.
Randy
Well,
knows I know all the Kroger secrets too. So
That's why I got the whistle.
There you go. Well, you can't talk top trends in produce and not introduce local. It's been a huge trend in produce that started in our department, is trickling all throughout the store, but really it's biggest in produce and continues to be. It's a hard thing to track and put an actual number on from an IRI or Nielsen perspective, but when we look at the consumer interest in local, it just continues to be hot. This survey said 54% of shoppers want their store to carry more locally sourced produce. When you look at all the special attributes, non-GMO, sustainably grown, organic, what have you, local is the biggest one across them all. What I also like about a local platform is the fact that if you look at organic or you look at value added, those tend to still be a little bit of a niche opportunity with a very specific shopper group. But local is really one that resonates with just about all different shopper groups. So how do they define produce? Well, 3 years ago when Rick and I started this, the first 4, from Radius to USA, all had about 25%. So shoppers were still getting used to the concept. In year 2, we saw that move towards Radius and state. And in year 3, it really solidified around those 2 first buckets, the Radius state and a little bit of city and town as well. And I think city and town might actually start to pop a little bit more, because what we're seeing a lot at retail is really that notion of hyper-localization popping up. First picture, Lowe's Foods out of the Carolinas, clip your own herbs. Mushrooms grown in store, mushroom kits, and the community gardens. So this whole notion of local is executed in many, many different ways and continues to drive dollars at retail. Why do people buy it? Well, first of all, nobody will be surprised. Support for the local economy, the local farmer, but there's a lot of other reasons as well, and we have a great opportunity to leverage those in our packaging, in our labeling, in our in-store signage, and those are things like better freshness. I know exactly where it's grown in my backyard, less of an environmental impact, so those are all great ways to reference the uniqueness and the power of local in our stores. Rick, over to you.
So, FMI has been doing this research for 3 years, and what I really thought was interesting was the very first year we asked consumers about local, they said it was quality and freshness was the number 1 reason. And in the second year, and you don't normally see these stats shift, second year it was supporting the local economy, supporting that local farmer. And so, local's been around forever, but this development over the last 5 years, it's here. It's going to be here to stay. So, John, as a retail chain in so many diverse markets, how do you maintain brand consistency while providing local favorites?
Good question, Rick. We have a very multifaceted approach to this. The first one is obviously all stores are different in some ways, but we have a segmentation model using the data that people spoke about earlier to really know who the customer is. We know what's in common with our customers, we know what the differentiating points are, and we really go after that to make sure that we satisfy their particular needs. That's on economic levels, social levels, all looking at the total demographics, both internal and external data. We also really want to maintain great relationships with our local farmers. We have over 200 local farmers that we partner with. We see them as heroes for our customers. And I think it really comes down to the storytelling to make sure that we tell our customers about that we are buying locally, that we do source sustainably. The main business that I represent is most of my stores are in Pennsylvania, which if there's any mushroom farmers here, you're probably living in Pennsylvania because it's the #1 producer, apples as well. So we are in the agricultural states, and we're proud of that. We're proud of our local farmers, and I think it's about delivering that message most effectively, which is the real challenge.
Randy, we're hearing the term hyper-localization. Are you seeing this at retail? And what opportunities does the Southeast have specifically in terms of local concepts?
Yeah, hyper-localization is the buzzword right now. But let's cut to the chase first in terms of challenges. Local is challenging for big retailers, and I hear a little bit of that with John. Our colleagues at other retailers, it's challenging. There's even big retailers that have shifted their focus away from local for efficiencies and cost structures and things of that nature. When you think about Kroger, our volume is high, our supply chain is difficult. What we need versus what's available on a hyper-local standpoint is just challenging, but we know it's important because the customer associates it with quality and freshness. So we put some processes into place. We added some resources to the big team to dedicate to this whole hyperlocal buzz. And I'll tell you, late last year, we deployed an initiative called We Are Local, where we set up a website and we communicated to the supplier community to get in contact with us, and we want to do business with you. We just have to sit at the table and figure out how can we do that together, because it's challenging with our size and scale. But we know that there are solutions, that we don't have all of them, but I think if we sit down at the table and talk about it, we can come up with them together. Because there's evidences of us in all the geographical regions that we operate in where there's successes.
Yeah, I think that is the elephant in the room. Is it is difficult for the big chains to also remain in this hyper-localization. Jake, how do your customers, what's their definition of local, and is it different than the average brick and mortar?
Yeah, I think for us, local is probably a little bit less of a focus because, a customer that gets a box packed in our New Jersey facility could be in Boston or Chicago or Jacksonville, right? And so tough to really get them to connect with that local idea, right? And so for us, instead, we push heavily on sustainability. We think that's the message that we can really hammer home with our customers that they're very engaged with, right? If you think about our core demographics, sustainability is a big focus for them as we think to the future and what our world looks like. And so for us at HelloFresh, we've really sat down over the last year and defined what does HelloFresh sustainable mean for us. We're going to be doing a lot of work this year rolling out that program and really trying to give the farmers the credit for the work that you guys are already doing. Growing up in this industry, I understand how tough and the different regulations and all the things that you guys do to go above and beyond that. And so at HelloFresh, we really want to create an environment where we can sort of stand behind you and sort of have that ability to easily communicate to our customers what our farmers do on a day-to-day basis to really give back and sort of protect the environment.
Okay. Anne-Marie?
Well, another point you have to make in a produce presentation in terms of growth is organic. We just continue to see extremely high growth numbers, and granted, they're still off of a fairly small base, but we're starting to very closely approach that 10% of total produce sales point. The U.S. overall saw some very nice, robust dollar and volume and each's growth. And the Southeast, we're lagging still a little bit on the market share, but we're starting to make that up because our growth is a lot higher than that of the total U.S. So how about where does that growth come from? Well, that's the beauty really of the organic story. We see more households getting engaged. In our first survey, we had 52% that bought organic in the last 30 days, 60% last year, and 62% this year. So it continues to climb. People that are buying it are buying more, and we continue to see more points of distribution, meaning more retailers are selling it. So it's really the perfect three-legged stool for growth. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that the bigger the organic pie becomes, the more that shopper is changing. All these guys have mentioned data quite a bit, and knowing who shops at your store and segmentation. And in organic, that is crucially important because that core organic shopper, they have no issues with the price differentials. They have no issues driving to another store to buy it, and they want to buy organic any place, anywhere, anytime. But that more periphery shopper, which is the biggest chunk of them, 66%, they just dip in and out of organic produce, and it's our job to get them to dip in a lot more than to dip out, right? So a lot of these guys look for a promotion or just a certain item because they've heard organic bananas are better or whatever it might be. So what can we do from an educational point of view to make sure that we draw these people in as often as possible? So what are the purchase drivers? Free from, by far, is the number one at 60%. It's, to a lot of shoppers, almost a bit of a shortcut to everything that they're trying to avoid, and they feel organic provides a lot quicker answer than looking for the no pesticides, no herbicides, and what have you. Positive long-term health effects, very closely related to organic, less of an environmental impact. We heard that a couple of times. So again, this is a great opportunity for us to provide those kinds of tiebacks to our packaging, to our in-store signage, and directly reference the notion of, hey, it's better for your health and the environment. The super value line, free from anything you might be able to avoid. So really, the adaptation of the messaging based on who shops at your store is a great way to go about it. Clicker issues, next slide. Thank you, Rick, over to you.
So, organic sales have continued to grow, but overall, and mostly for the traditional chains, its percent of total hasn't changed dramatically. So I want to ask you some questions about your commitment to organics. So John, do you see organics becoming price comparable to conventional items?
I would say not at this time, based upon the demand of the items. I think depending on the category, sometimes we do see that the value ratio is about the same, and in those times we're very happy to pass that on to our customers. But generally, the amount of acres devoted to organic are still limited, and it is a process from conventional to transitional to organic fields. So we see that over time, we continue to see the category grow, but I think there will be a value differential for a substantial amount of time.
Randy, is there a point where in some SKUs you'll just have an organic to broaden the overall department assortment rather than running conventional and organic?
The short answer to that is we've made some of those choices already, so yes, but may not in other areas. But I want to take a step back just for a second, because your segue into your questions was talking about our commitment to organics. So I'm going to put a little plug for the Kroger Company here.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody read our press release a few weeks ago. And when you think about the total market of organic sales in the United States, anywhere from $5.5 to $6 billion, right? And our volume is north of 1 billion, representing 20% of the total United States business in organic fruits and vegetables. In the markets in which we operate, we're over 40%. So that speaks in itself about our commitment to organics. We haven't gone into it in the last year or two. This has been a 15-year ride with a high-level commitment and partnership with great growers and suppliers. And our quest is going to continue in organics because that's what the customer is telling us. But the short answer to your question is yes, there are some items that can be exclusively organic. Some examples of that would be packaged herbs or variety veg. But we know that a lot of customers are still conscious about price, and that doesn't always give the opportunity to be exclusive. So,
Jake, do any of your customers request fully organic meal kits?
Yeah, for sure. Before we start that question, just my last role at Kroger before I came to HelloFresh was managing the organic produce business. So I just want to say you're welcome to Randy for all that awesome growth that you've had the last couple of years. So you couldn't have done it without me. So
I've got a rebuttal.
Yeah, I'll bring it back to you.
Appreciate that.
The whistle is nearby.
No, for sure. I mean, we do have customers that request it, right? And I think when we ask our core customer, what trade-offs would you have for organics, they wouldn't accept a lesser product offering from us or an increase in price, right, for our core customer. But, organic is something that we continue to strive as a company of finding a way to make it fit because we think it fits so well within the message of HelloFresh overall. So I'll let Randy.
All right, Randy.
No, I mean, many of us have been selling produce since Lassie was a pup. And the relationships we've had with our suppliers. So you think about Cal Organic. The relationship we've had with those guys have been a long time. And just in recent discussions with them, that commitment's going to continue for hopefully another 15, 20 years. And we're talking about ways that we can increase each other's business and make it affordable to every customer to move them to be exclusively organic. So.
And Jake, I would tell you, and every time I change roles, the folks would say, Rick who? So.
Appreciate that.
Bob, you still like me, right? So.
Anne-Marie?
Awesome. All right, trend 8, again, one that will surprise nobody, and that is value added. It just continues to drive growth for the produce department at retail. Again, still only about 8-9% of the total department. Vegetables are a lot bigger than fruit, and vegetables really is where a lot of the growth comes from as well. Make sure you look at that flyer. That's where we break out fruit from vegetables. And as you can see, we're still looking at growth that is ahead of the total department, so it continues to be a great area for investment. However, can we continue to grow that? Yes, say 85% of shoppers, we can be tempted to buy more or to buy value-added produce. The biggest barrier, we've heard it from these guys in organic, it's true in value-added as well, and that is price. We need to figure out a way where we can make that value equation to where folks are willing to pay for chopped onions, mushrooms, and what have you. But there's a lot of barriers too that go beyond that price point, and that is shelf life at home. Do I know if it was prepared safely? And that's not something unique to produce at all. We see that in meat. We see that in deli prepared. That whole notion of somebody else touching my food is something we have to address. Freshness of the items being used, and among buyers, current buyers, a lot of them say, well, if there were more assortment, I would buy more. So addressing those perception issues, as I mentioned, it's cut fresh in store or fresh for you. Those kinds of references will really help draw some of those folks into your category. Highlight also the notion that, hey, we have value-added meat, we have value-added produce, we can put it together for you and go directly against the alternative of takeout or eating out. Lastly, there is a huge demographic overlap between value-added shoppers and organic shoppers. So in stores where both are doing really well, start to also introduce the notion of organic value-added. Rick, over to you.
So we know convenience is a big issue for consumers, and we know that value-added is a great convenience. So John, how do you communicate the price-value equation to lower income consumers in value-added?
Good question, Rick. We have seen, first of all, massive growth in these areas between our cut fruit business and our cut vegetable businesses have been exploding. I think one of the drivers of that is that consumers, one of the things that they value is their time and their store's ability to sometimes do it quicker, better than they can. For lower income customers, we see that there are particular categories, there are particular offerings that we can offer great value for them as well, and we continue to do that. We have large displays, particularly on local products. Summer months, we were able to sell tremendous amounts of items that we add value to the customer, and we can see that continuing to grow as we go forward.
Good. Randy, two additional barriers to purchase for value-added produce is the perception on quality and freshness. How do you communicate the potential barrier to customers in your value product area?
Well, I think one way we can do that is our tiered private label brand strategy. So when customers come into our stores, they're telling us that there's high faith and trust in our brand. So you think about Simple Truth, Private Selection, Kroger brand, and they associate it with quality and value. So when you have those three things, it is a shot in the arm to say, how do we put our brands forward in the value-added section? So I think about salad mix. We're on a two-tiered structure here. We have the national name brands, and then we have our private label, and the customer is responding to both, but they equate ours to value, trust, and quality.
Okay.
Well, that is actually exactly my point 9, and that is brand. So, Randy, you pretty much covered it all.
Oh, great.
Produce is very much embracing brands. It's something that really, of course, comes from center stores, but meat really moved into branding, and now we see produce gaining quite big as well. Both on the private brand side and the manufacturer brand side, we continue to see huge growth, especially when you look over multiple years. You mentioned having multiple tiers and really taking that trust that people have built up from the center store. Here you see the Publix example with their premium line and their regular Publix brand line, and you can really give a produce item more of that premium shine by leveraging those different tiers that you've built up throughout. Of course, leveraging brands from other sides of the stores as well. Really loves that notion of Boar's Head, for instance, very well known as an upscale premium deli brand. So it really gives what would be normally a fairly generic chef salad this premium shine, and will get people to pay a little bit more for it. Rick, over to you.
So, we used to think of the produce department as being limited in brands, and now you have to balance this emergence of brands and at the same time drive the idea that your produce is unique to your organization. Jake, how do you communicate brand in your meal kits?
Yeah, at HelloFresh, we've worked really hard over the last year of developing a very strong, robust private label program for ourselves to really offer a comprehensive sort of like branding within the box. And I think of any of the meal kits when you open ours, that branding really stands out and really engages with our customer. But we've done that with a purpose and a reason. We've done that so that when we offer those branded opportunities to our consumer, it really stands out from the core of what they're used to getting, right? For us, the opportunity for a brand to have direct consumer relation through our box, we found that to be very powerful. Instead of just putting out an ad or a digital coupon and hoping a customer is going to pick up the product, for our branded partners, they're getting that interaction with the customer that they're actually going to 100% use that recipe, right? And they're going to use it when they get home, and it's not going to get forgotten or thrown away. And so for us, we've had a lot of great brand partners that have come in and done these programs with us. Zespri is one in produce that I think went very, very well and was very successful for us, where we took their Sun Gold kiwi, and a big push for them was really wanting to show consumers that kiwis are not just for snacking, right? But that you can use them in a multitude of different ways. So our chefs developed a kiwi salsa steak taco, right? And so the consumer got their couple gold kiwis in the bag. They got an insert in the bag. We had our digital team really push. Zespri, their digital team did some outreach as well of, find it in your HelloFresh meal this week. And it really gave, those couple 100,000 customers that got that offering that week the opportunity to use kiwi in a different way so that the next time that customer is in the store, they're going to be looking for your brand, looking for your item, and not just as maybe a snacking or whatever use they're used to, but really in a unique and different way.
John, how does your organization treat brands and produce?
We believe that there's room at the table for both our own brand as well as national brands. We have some great national brand partners I see a bunch of faces of people in the room here that we do a lot of business with, and we're very proud of the relationships that we have with you. We also have a fairly robust own brand business too. I think at the end of the day though, as it always does, it comes down to the consumer. What is the consumer looking for? They're looking for different choices, whether it is in our own brands, whether it's commodities or products that are better for you, like our Nature's Promise labels. It comes down to the consumer and how do we tell that story. So if you have a great national brand product that fills that need, you're more than welcome to come visit us anytime. In the meantime, we have some great own brand products that we also sell every day that we're also extremely proud of. So I think it's a balancing act, as it always is.
We're in the home stretch, Anne-Marie,
We
so let's
are.
get to the last
I'm going to
point.
wrap it up. We talked about what the consumer wants. So that was our very last question of the survey, and that is, what can we do to make your produce shopping better? Because at the end of the day, what we found out is, what we tend to do is have a beautiful department early in the morning. We get high ratings on variety, on cleanliness, on being in stock. But as the clock runs down, we often see that our department conditions decline, and people react to that. And you see optimal conditions relate to high spending and high loyalty. So that's something to keep in mind. So how can we improve? Well, variety is the number one. So it's first of all variety in general, also a lot of those special attributes. And Rick, you always make the point too that variety is to being in stock. Nobody wants to buy the last apple, so we need to make sure that we have variety and assortment available. We talked about that a lot already. Better prices and promotions. I flipped by it, that's okay. We all know that at the end of the day, every consumer is going to say, I want better prices. Our job is to get them off that price point and to talk really about something else. Customer service and outreach, that's an area where every single year we see a growing interest from the consumer. John, I think you mentioned it. People are getting more interested. They're getting more knowledgeable. And as a result, we need to be more knowledgeable as retailers, packers, processors as well. Rick, over to you.
So consumers want variety and customer service, and both are hard to achieve. You know, variety means something different to everyone, and sometimes it can lead to excessive food waste. So John, how do you work to achieve variety in your store and keep an eye on food waste?
Sure. So as we said before, we do have a very clear view of who our customers are that shop our stores, as well as the customers that reside in the areas around our stores, and we would like to satisfy both of them. We really use all the data that we have available to understand that to the best possible way. Shrink, especially produce shrink, is and always will be a necessary part of the business. We should not try to eliminate that, because it also is an inverse relationship to our freshness. We hold that very dear to us. So I think one of the things that we really have to do is focus on making sure that we have, as you said, great conditions, very good conditions from morning till evening as our customers shop. I think nearly 290 pounds per American per year right now is being wasted, though, from a food waste perspective, which is huge and kind of a very sad thing. Produce is one of the areas that clearly we could fill better gaps in terms of opportunities as retailers to support our local food banks. I think we've done some great work in the past with meat and seafood and, of course, the center store categories. But produce is an area that we're going to continue to focus on to improve what we offer our food banks and make sure that we're feeding the communities we serve.
You know, Randy, I want to ask you the same question. How do you achieve variety in your stores and still keep an eye on food waste?
Yeah, no, I think John answered that very well. I mean, our approach is very similar to what John articulated there. I'd tell you a step beyond that is we have the ability of looking at the data from every customer that shops every one of our stores to assess the needs that they're telling us. And you know, we had a program in play called Extreme Variety, where we were trying to get credit for variety, but we weren't doing it responsibly. And we evolved that program to be called Relevant Assortment. So now we know what the customer wants in each one of our stores. So let's build an assortment program that's unique but appealing to them to minimize the waste and get the credit for variety.
So have variety, but not for variety's sake.
Correct.
Yeah. And Jake, you know, your meal kits are known for variety and fresh ethnic twists. How do you work to stay unique enough, but still appeal to the masses?
Yeah, for sure. Variety is a fun topic for us at HelloFresh. We think we have a unique way to introduce customers to unique and different product offerings, right? And so, but for us at HelloFresh, I think especially compared to some of our competitors, our culinary team does a very good job of what our customer wants, which is pushing them slightly outside of their comfort zone, but not all the way out. You know, we get a lot of our competitor boxes in that we look at, and there's some weeks I can't pronounce any of the recipe names, right? Where they're just a little bit too far out there. And I think, Anne-Marie, you had on one of the slides that it was 38% or something still wanted that like home cooked type meal experience, right? And so our customer wants to get pushed a little bit outside their comfort zone, but not too much. But we've found a lot of unique insights as we've been able to sort of test recipes and see what feedback we get from our customers. And one of the things that we found that's really unique and different is our families in our family plan love bok choy. And it's really the moms that love bok choy because they feel like it's something unique and different and exotic that they're serving their family. Usually it's in a stir fry or something that they can hide the veggie in there where their kid will sort of sneak through and eat it. Hasn't worked on my kids yet with our meals, but hopefully it will eventually. But you know, for us, it's really about that unique opportunity to stretch our customer a little bit, sort of give them the enjoyment of saying, hey, this is something new I'd never cook at home before. But at the same time, maybe introduce them to something that's more nutritious or beneficial for them. So
before I kick it back to Anne-Marie, what a pleasure to have you guys as panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are a little bit over on time, so I want to be cognizant of the clock, but a very, very important announcement is that SEPC and FMI worked together to make sure that all of you guys can have access to the full report and all those details and all that important data that these guys kept referring to. So a 70% discount, which takes the price for a non-FMI member from $500 to $150. So take a picture of this. If you can't find it, it's the FMI store. I put it on the slide, but feel free to email either Rick or myself. Also, we will be available for questions if you want to hang around, or just email myself or Rick. But I hope you have a wonderful conference, and thank you for attending.